Hello, Empathy Heroes. It is me, Known Wells, creator of You, Me, Empathy. Today's show, episode 12, I am chatting with one of my heroes, podcast hero, mental health hero, human hero, Paul Gilmartin. We are chatting about intimacy and boundaries. If you don't know Paul Gilmartin, he is the host of the Mental Illness Happy Hour, a podcast that I love and I've been listening to for years. Paul is doing amazing work over there in terms of vulnerability and just normalizing conversations about mental illness. And he, like I said, he's a hero of mine and I love him. And I hope you love him too. On this episode, exploring intimacy and boundaries, Paul shares his experience as the victim of covert incest. We talk about creating healthy boundaries, and we explore speaking our truths without being cruel. The disclaimer for the show is that the You, Me, Empathy podcast is for informational and or entertainment purposes only and is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. I'm a feely human, silly boy, dunderhead, and I'm not a professional. So take that. And last thing I'll say before we get into the show is that go check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/YouMeEmpathy. You can get some stickers, be a guest, all that good stuff. And if you don't want to support us there, you can, an easy way to do it, a free way to support this podcast is to give us a rating and review in iTunes. It's very simple, takes a couple minutes. Just express your undying love for this show there. That would be wonderful. Okay. Enjoy this episode 12 on intimacy and boundaries with my guest and hero of mine, Paul Gilmartin. Enjoy. Welcome to episode 12 of You, Me, Empathy, a podcast about exploring the struggles we face in our day-to-day lives as humans trying to get by on this wondrous and overwhelming pale blue dot. The intent of You, Me, Empathy is to talk openly, without judgment, about our neuroses, our mental illnesses, our shared anxieties and worries, to create a dialogue that is vulnerable and deeply human and empathetic, and to share that dialogue with others to inspire conversation and insight so we can, hand in hand, break down the stigma that make us feel shame and guilt for struggling, for feeling our feelings, for being human. You, Me, Empathy is a safe place, a conversation between friends, a place to inspire the empathy and beauty in all of us. Today, in episode 12, I am so honored and admittedly a bundle of nerves to continue this empathy journey on the topic of intimacy and boundaries with Mental Illness Happy Hour podcaster, comedian, and mental health awareness hero, Paul Gilmartin. Hello, Paul.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well.
You really need to raise your standards.
No, not at all, man.
This is actually an intervention. This is an intervention on behalf of your standards. We're all concerned that the bar is too low for who you get nervous around.
Name who? Who's this we? Who's this we?
Just me.
Well, I'm going to correct you off the top, just so we're clear and we're being open with each other. My name is pronounced like Known, so it's known.
Known.
Yeah, I know. It's a weird one. But I don't blame you, because technically whenever I write it in email or whatever, it's just an NON, so it looks like non. But technically it does. Yeah, you're right. Technically there's a line over the O. It's called a macron. It makes that long O sound, and I blame hippie parents.
God damn them.
God damn them.
Yeah, as if the BO wasn't enough.
Indeed. Indeed. Well, thanks for being on You Me Empathy.
My pleasure.
Yeah. So before we get into the topic, I always like to start off the show just with a check-in, like an emotional check-in. How are you doing? How was your week? All that jazz.
Really, really good. Considering I had a really kind of, I don't know what you would call it, about 10 days ago, a week ago Thursday, a shooting victim stumbled into our support group and was bleeding out. And it was pretty traumatic seeing this. He was shot just outside the door of our support group, unrelated to our support group. And, it kind of put me in a kind of a haze for a couple of days. And I wasn't even that close to this guy. There were guys next to him who were immediately jumped into, action, putting a tourniquet on him, et cetera. And these guys had blood up to their elbows. But at first we didn't know if a gunman was going to continue coming in. And that was the only door. So we were essentially trapped in there if that person had come after them. I felt a little bit in a daze for a while. I talked to my therapist. She said, well, here's some things you should know are very common with PTSD, is you might feel irritable or sad or et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, oh, so every day. No, I love my life. In a nutshell, I've never been happier. I've never felt more authentic. And it's part of life, I guess, is that we get stuff thrown at us, and I kind of look at it as an opportunity to work on myself, reach out to other people, ask for help, or just speak openly about my feelings in the hope that somebody else can relate.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a tremendous perspective. I heard you talk about that experience on your show, and I just wanted to say I'm, sorry you had to go through that. That must have been a trying, stressful, anxious experience. I mean, it would be for me.
Yeah, it was. But the funny thing is it didn't feel that way. I felt off, but it didn't feel stressful. It felt like numb and like half my brain was gone.
Yeah, a little disconnected or removed from it.
Yeah. What's interesting is it was almost the same feeling when I would get off stage after doing a really long comedy show, where you'd concentrated for so long, so hard that it's almost like this decompression chamber. Like when you would get off stage after doing 45 minutes or an hour and you would go into the green room, it's almost impossible to have a conversation with somebody because you're just kind of in this mental mode that isn't really good for communication. I suppose in some ways that the thing that it has in common with the thing that, the shooting thing is, I think they're both kind of survival modes. One is kind of a career, please love me. I didn't get it at home. Validate my ego survival mode. And then the other one is shit's going down survival mode. That's my 2 cents on maybe what they share, but it felt very similar. Also similar to the feeling after taking like the SAT, kind of 3 or 4 hour test where you're just spent.
Oh God, those are the worst.
Yeah.
I was a terrible test taker. Any sort of timed test, I just couldn't, I had to I basically had to give up because I was just like, it was just like too much for me.
Too much pressure.
Yeah.
Would it have made it worse if somebody was behind you right in your ear going?
They may have well been. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was basically that. Yeah. I was a terrible test taker. Oh, that brings me back. How dare you bring that up? Well, I'm happy to hear that you found some good perspective in that experience, and as a good sort of jumping off point to embrace some vulnerability and talk about it. And I'm glad you talked about it on the show for what it's worth.
Well, good. The response I got from people was really, really supportive, and that's nice because, as you know, from listening to my show, I have a mean part of my brain that criticizes everything and makes me second guess myself. And most of the time, I know that it's lying to me, but sometimes I don't.
Yeah.
And
we're very good at that. We're very good at lying to ourselves. We're very good at tricking ourselves into thinking that something is real when it's completely false.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Well, as far as my week, my emotional check-in, I've struggled with balance this week. There's a thing I do where I vacillate pretty starkly between feeling high anxiety and then also just going from super high anxiety and then going to like, I'm cool, I'm collected. And I wonder sometimes if the cool, collected side of me is just a sort of a veneer over, I'm painting over that anxiety. So I have to like dig at that anxiety and sort of uncover it a little better than I am. So that's sort of where I'm at this week.
I think if you put in a lot of effort, you could replace the I'm good, I'm cool with debilitating depression.
Yes. So. And I've been there. So yeah, no, I appreciate that. I got two options.
Do you have bipolar?
No, I struggle with pretty severe anxiety and bouts of depression.
Yeah.
There was a time I was on Prozac for a period of time, and that made me exceptionally those sort of swings, highs and lows were just much more pronounced. So I kind of weaned off of those with a psychiatrist. And lately, I've been pretty good. I've trying to deal with my anxiety in healthier ways, but for whatever reason, this week has been a little bit more sharp in the edges.
Yeah.
And I'm reading, I don't know if you've read this, maybe you have. It's quite amazing. The Body Keeps the Score. Have you read this?
I have heard so many great things about that book. I've not read it, but it's definitely on my gonna read it someday list.
You really should. It's by Bessel van der Kolk. It's all about how we hold trauma in our bodies. And I was listening to it. I went for a hike today and I was listening to chapter 6 or 7 and talking about the ACE studies that they did, ACE studies that they did in like the late 90s or something like that with kids and trauma and the way kids reacted to traumatic experiences. Like one of the examples they gave was they'd show the kids, images of, like one example was they showed images of like a silhouette of a mother and her pregnant belly. And one of the children who had this long, horrific experience, sexually abused as a 4-year-old, her reaction to that image was, asking about, penises and vaginas and asking about all these, sort of sexually charged things. And it just made me think like, it made me think about this experience that I had in my childhood. And I sort of wrote this long story about this really disturbed child who was it was just a really violent story. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. I had this sort of reaction to this. I don't know. I was putting pieces together and it's a really, really insightful book. I highly recommend it.
Yeah. When I was talking to my therapist, the first time I talked to her after the shooting, she mentioned that book.
Oh, okay.
Is that the book that talks about how animals can literally shake it off?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Many
there's
people have mentioned that.
yeah, it's really good. And yeah, it's I think it came out maybe 2013, so it's not too old. Yeah, he talks about animals. There's some Darwin references in there, and yeah, it's really quite good. Um,
Cool.
yeah. All right, let's talk about you, Paul. um,
What do you
for
want to know?
I want to know everything. No, not everything. I know a lot because I listen to your show, and you're very good at being open and transparent, which I love deeply. But for my listeners, I guess share a little bit about yourself and your sort of mental health origin story, so to speak, and then we'll delve into intimacy and boundaries.
Um, I got sober about 14 years ago because um, I was self-medicating my depression and anxiety and worldview, honestly. Um, and it wasn't working anymore, and it was driving me closer and closer to suicide. Um, my house, growing up, on the surface looked like a typical suburban uh, kind of home, but my mom was inappropriate with me, something that a term that would later be coined by a really, really great psychologist who wrote a book called Silently Seduced. The guy's name is Ken Adams, and a term he coined is covert incest, which is um, using the child emotionally and or crossing physical boundaries, but short of touching the child's genitals. And the thing that overt and covert incest have in common is that the parent is putting their needs ahead of the child. So, whatever form it kind of comes in isn't as important as the fact that the message that the child gets is that they don't matter. So, kind of between my dad ignoring me and my mom kind of objectifying me, I've I think it affected me in how I view the world, how I trust people, how I feel about getting close to people, et cetera, et cetera. And all this has, I've had to deal with all of this to stay sober these last 14 years, but I'm grateful because it's been cool because I've had to learn tools to deal with my emotions so that I don't pick up a drink or go look at 5 hours of pornography or whatever it is that I want to use to soothe myself to escape instead of feeling.
Right.
And which leads us to boundaries. Boundaries have been a huge tool for me to use in practicing self-care.
What kind of boundaries are you talking about? Like
With people,
uh-huh.
what I will tolerate in a relationship or a conversation with people. Here's a great example of how much I struggled with boundaries. The lengths I would go to avoid conflict or protect other people's feelings. Um, this was probably about 20 years ago when my ex and I were still living together. We shared a house and we were having hardwood floors put in. And I walked around the corner one day into the living room, and one of the workmen was stealing my CDs. And he saw me see him. I saw him see me see him. And I pretended I didn't see him
Mm,
because I didn't want to embarrass him. I didn't want him to lose his job. And I didn't know what to say.
yeah.
And I remember feeling shame that I couldn't stand up for myself. So I knew it was not healthy, but I didn't know how to go about it. And I think that is partly a result of the fact that I wasn't encouraged or shown how to advocate for myself. In fact, quite the opposite. As a child, if I didn't agree with my mom, I was chided or, manipulated or, whatever. And this isn't to say that my mom doesn't have great qualities. That's one of the things that makes it so difficult often in cutting contact or setting boundaries with someone, is you may really love this person and they have parts of them that you really love being around, but often there's this other side to them that is unhealthy to be exposed to. So the boundaries I'm talking about, to kind of circle back, are standing up for myself if somebody is disrespecting me, being dishonest, trying to use me, talking to me in a way that I feel is inappropriate,
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
Yeah. I so relate to that story of you walking in and they're stealing your CDs. I think I've struggled in the past with similar sort of situations. I feel shame. I also don't want to put them in a uncomfortable position, even though they're, violating my boundaries. I'm sort of putting it, I'm like, in a way, they're like, I don't want to make them feel uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you know how we were talking about how we lie to ourselves. In that moment, I told myself, well, I have more money than he does. So
yeah,
it's not that bad of a thing.
Yeah.
But no, that's not right.
No,
that
no,
guy's
it's
going to
not.
go steal from somebody else at the very least.
Yeah.
But the important thing is that I stand up for myself first, and then worry about him stealing from somebody else later on. That's not as pressing of an issue as me, being a doormat because I so desperately want to be liked or don't want to experience an uncomfortable situation, which is really a big part of why my sense of humor developed. Is it was very tense in my house. There wasn't screaming, but it was clear, even to me at 5 or 6 years old, that my dad did not enjoy my mom's company, and my mom resented my dad, and she chose me to fill the void. And very often that's the setup for covert incest.
Yeah. And the humor was the coping mechanism?
Yeah, it was my way to let out steam,
Yeah.
to gain some semblance of control, to get in a word edgewise, because my mom can be prone to diatribes, and I would kind of feel sorry for her, like she had nobody, and so I would kind of be the designated captive audience instead of saying, "Mom, shut up! My God, you've talked for the last half hour. I'm a kid. I don't want to hear about this." But when you're a kid, all you know is, I don't want my mom to cry again.
Yeah. That's so tough. So how did you get to, walk me through a little bit of your journey from sort of that moment, you walking in on that guy, stealing your CDs, to, where you are today in terms of your boundary setting?
Well, the very first time I even became aware of boundaries was my first time in therapy. I was in my early to mid 20s, and it came out that my mom would, pinch my butt and tell me how cute I am. And the therapist kind of looked at me funny and said, "That's incredibly inappropriate." And I kind of thought about it, and I don't remember what I said. And she said, "Do you enjoy her doing that?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Why do you let her do it?" And I said, "Because she's my mom and it makes her happy." And she said, "But what about you?" And that I had never stopped to think about how it made me feel. And the other thing that came up, and so the next time my mom did that, I asked her to not do that again. And whenever I would set a boundary with my mom, she would act as if I was kind of making too big of a deal of something.
Yeah.
Which is another sign of a toxic, narcissistic person, is that they cannot wrap their head around somebody else having different experiences.
Right.
Um, and and then the other thing that came up in therapy is that I would often cave into what she wanted from me once she started crying. And the therapist said to me, "What would happen if you didn't and you just let her cry?" And I said, "Well, wouldn't that make me a terrible son?" And she said, "No. She's an adult. You're an adult. Um, it's time for you to stop being her emotional caretaker." And so the next time my mom pulled out that tool of crying, I said, "You can go ahead and cry, but I'm not changing my position." And like a light switch turning off, she stopped crying and began speaking like in a, it was as if she had stopped a performance.
Wow.
And I remember after I hung up the phone, I felt like I grew 2 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one of the first times, but I didn't really consistently work on boundaries. Those were kind of the only two boundaries I had set with my mom and with people in general between being 24 and maybe 40s when I got sober. And it really wasn't until actually about 6 or 7 years into sobriety, I started going to another support group as well for intimacy struggles, and found out that a lot of people in the same group had been objectified by parents or neglected or abandoned in some way. We all kind of shared the feeling that we were an object in this world to
Right.
people, and that our value lay in our ability to people please or in the power of our sexuality. And it was in there that I went through a period of abstaining from any type of pornography use, et cetera, et cetera. Just taking a break from even having an orgasm for, I think it was like 6, 7 months. And the theory behind this is that for people who act out compulsively sexually, it's not a healthy way to use sex because you're using it to avoid something as opposed to enjoying something, expressing yourself, connecting to someone. It's used to numb yourself.
Right.
And when you're in that kind of constant state of numbness, the feelings that you have been pushing down since you were a kid stay down. They'll start to percolate up when you get triggered by certain things, maybe a visit back home, maybe losing a job or something else. And when you go through withdrawal from soothing yourself with orgasms or compulsive porn viewing or whatever your thing is, you begin to feel those feelings that come up. And you, for lack of a better phrase, you get back into your body. And you experience the world in a different way, because now when you're around someone who is toxic, you're not so numb that you just shut down a little bit and bide your time. It's intolerable being around that person. So you have two choices. You can either run and go act out, or you can stand up for yourself, which might mean leaving the room, speaking up and saying, "Hey, I'm not okay with the tone that this conversation has," or, "This is the third time in a row that you've been a half hour late, and I'm starting to feel annoyed." Whatever it is, those were the boundaries that for me began to help me heal and reverse that message that I had in my head since I was a kid, which is that you don't really matter.
Yeah.
To undo the belief that you don't really matter, you have to treat yourself as if you matter. Not that you're better than anybody, but that you're not worse than anybody.
Right. Right. And you got that, in therapy, in your group therapy, is that where you got the inputs to to say, I'm not going to look at porn or any of that for 6 months? Is that where you got that feedback?
Yes. And it was, and it's not, it wasn't a moral reason for not looking at porn.
Right.
It was a path for healing and getting back in my body, so that I would have the power of choice returned to me, because I would have a different tool to reach for when I would get triggered, sad, lonely, hungry, tired, whatever the trigger might be.
Yeah.
And here's a great example of a boundary that I've just learned in the last couple of months, a couple of years actually, is I would, when my mom used to go on extended, diatribes over the phone or in person, I would always just kind of, I don't know if dissociate is a too strong of a word, but I would just tune out,
Mm-hmm.
and I began bumping into people in my recovery groups who would do the same thing. And I thought, this is a good chance for me to find a way to speak my truth in a way that is diplomatic, but not apologetic. And so it was about a year or two ago, I was having coffee with a guy, and we'd known each other for years, and he was talking and talking and talking and talking and talking and talking. And I stopped him at one point and I said, man, I love you. I care about you, but I got to be honest. We've been here for 45 minutes and you have talked for 44 minutes and 30 seconds. And he went, wow, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you for telling me that. And in that moment, I realized how powerful that is, because I did both of us a favor in that moment. I said to him, if I didn't care about you, I would just, make an excuse to not meet you for coffee.
Sure.
But I care about you. And I figured that you would want to know. And he said, I do want to know. And I said, and honestly, it's the reason why a lot of times I don't return your phone calls.
Right.
And to me, it's a good example of a way that we can speak our truth without being cruel.
Yep. Yeah, I like that one a lot. I think a lot of times when it comes to boundaries and intimacy, transparency is a huge part of that.
Yes.
And openness, and also recognize. Yeah. Also, just go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, also recognizing that, 100% positivity all the time is not necessarily a reality, but kindness and compassion are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So go ahead.
To me, the motto I try to live by is be compassionate towards other people, but not at the expense of compassion for yourself. And if you're not numbing yourself through an addiction, there's a good chance that you're going to be fairly present in your body, and you can listen to it and say, oh, this person gives me a stomachache. I wonder what's going on here.
Yeah.
Or I'm feeling dread when I see their number come up on the phone. So those are opportunities to say, what would I like to see happen in this relationship? And instead of trying to control or change that other person, just express my feelings and say, I find myself starting to feel resentful, when this happens or that happens, instead of saying, you always do this and you're mean and you're that. Instead saying, the last couple times we've gotten together, I just kind of felt like an audience member, and I don't want to feel that way. And you're somebody I care about, so I try to mix in some positive truths in it as well to make it palatable without it being untrue for that person. Because to communicate with somebody something that is difficult with them, I think it's really important for that person to not feel cornered, to give them a chance to move forward and kind of reach out to you and say, I'm sorry, or, oh my God, I had no idea. Because if we put them on the defensive, that's just, for one, it's not kind.
Right.
It's unnecessary, but it does them no good, because then you're either going to fill them with shame, or they're going to walk away thinking that you're not right in the least and you're just an asshole.
Yeah.
And they're probably going to miss the opportunity to look at themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great tool. I think that, giving them the opportunity to say, just to see your perspective. You talk about how you're experiencing the situation, how you're feeling, and that gives them, again, the opportunity to say, okay, I didn't see it from that perspective, or, whatever.
Yeah, because your feelings are not up for debate.
Right. I want to go back to the tool you were talking about when you were talking about the numbing route. So when hold on, I'm losing my train of thought again.
I do it all the time.
Well, one sort of common thing that keeps coming up on this show is developing the tools that allow us to have perspective and insight into our own emotional, mental health. And I like what you said about taking control of your own self when you took that time off and you focused on yourself. And then the next time you had this interaction with your mother, you then had the tool to say no, or to just address it in a way that was healthy, because you didn't have that, that out that was a numbing out, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like those are so important in any sort of interpersonal relational experiences, because you are recognizing how you're feeling in your body, you're in touch with yourself, and you're not so focused on them and those people we can't control. So
right. Yeah. It's an amazing feeling when you stop making your body your enemy. So many of us have just antagonistic relationship with our body, whether it be the way it looks or, how we feel. And it's really hard sometimes to know whether or not something that we're feeling is reality, or it's trauma disguising itself as reality. And so that's another thing that needed to be sorted out. And I mean, in both instances, I think it's important to take care of yourself, no matter what it is. For instance, there was a woman in my support group who reminded me very much of my mom. And she wasn't doing anything malicious. She just was a bit gabby and a little bit bossy, but nothing really over the line. But I got really triggered around her, and I could feel my face get hot and my anger start to come up. And she doesn't know that I set a boundary with her, but I avoid her.
Yeah.
And she doesn't need to know that I have an issue with her. So to me, that's a different type of boundary. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Have you experienced when? It made me think of the boundaries I've set with my father, who I don't really speak to anymore. I've sort of cut him out of my life because I've realized, over the years, that he just brings me too much emotional pain, and broke my heart for, way too many times. I'm wondering because that experience, creating those boundaries for me personally has been a challenge in the sense that like my siblings are still, some of my siblings are still close to him. And there are family events that where he shows up from time to time, and it's always so awkward. And so the boundaries I've come to realize, now that I'm in my later 30s now, that I just don't show up to those events.
Good for you.
Yeah.
That's a great act of self-care, man.
I think so too, but I get, I also put on myself, and I'm wondering if you can relate to this. I also put on myself, I feel I'm getting better at it, but there was times where I felt shame and guilt, and I feel that coming from certain people in my family.
Mm-hmm.
Have you related to that at all? Do you relate to that?
I haven't personally, but I know a lot of people who have. Any guilt or shame that I felt, I had put on myself.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe my mom had kind of thrown at me through a letter, or maybe a friend of hers trying to reach out and get me to reconnect with her. But as far as family members, no. But I do know of people who, for instance, this happens a lot. Somebody is sexually abused by, say, an uncle, and they go to one of the parents, usually the sibling of the uncle, and say, Uncle so-and-so has been doing this to me. And the parent doesn't protect the child.
Right.
Or the parent is abusing the kid, and when the kid gets to be an adult, it says to the other siblings, mom or dad did such and such, and the other siblings don't want to believe it because it's too uncomfortable or inconvenient, or they find it just existentially threatening.
Yeah.
That this person they depend on could be predatory. And not only does the victim not have a parent, now they don't have siblings, and they have siblings that are being hostile towards them. And that to me is really, really shitty. That's just shitty.
It's so damaging and so invalidating.
Yeah.
Because that experience is real.
Mm-hmm.
I had this experience, and I wrote about it last year. I wrote a sort of piece. I experienced some trauma, and I wrote about this period of my life, from 18, into my early 20s. I developed anorexia, and I was dealing with some dark depression. And I wrote this story, memoir-ish, and I had this vivid memory, very real memory of my father when I think I was around 8 or 9, maybe 10, where my brother and I went, there was a sort of stray cat, kitten. And our sort of like play area was like downstairs, and we brought the cat in, we were playing with it, and my dad like came in and said, get that cat out of here, I'm allergic. So we had to get the cat out. And then, of course, we were children, so we brought the cat in, 5 minutes later. 5 minutes after that, he came into the room, grabbed the cat, walked upstairs, out on the balcony, and heaved the cat about a good 100 yards into the air, and just heaved the cat, just threw the cat off the balcony. And
God.
Yeah, it was horrifying. It's an image that still lives in my brain. And I remember, I'm only bringing it up because as I was sort of working on that piece last year, I kind of brought it up to my mother, and her reaction was, "Oh, your father, your father loves animals. He would never do such a thing.
Wow.
And I was like, it was such a painful like reaction. I was just like,
Wow.
no,
So you
no.
were raised by two narcissists.
I've heard that a lot, and my mom would never listen to this show. So, but yes, I agree. I totally agree. She had to. Thankfully, she reached out to my sister, and my sister validated that the experience was true, and it did happen. And she eventually said sorry, which I appreciated. But
oh well, that's good.
Yeah, no, that was totally good. But to your point, like those, it's hard to, like, it's hard to accept. It's hard to accept those things happen. But you have to at least accept the fact that someone, for their experience, it was real for them.
Yes.
Maybe it didn't happen exactly as I remember it, because memory is fallible, of course, but that was the horrific reality that I experienced. And a response like that is damaging, even if she doesn't see it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're looking to heal. You're looking to be validated, to have the insanity, validated.
Yeah.
Having insanity not validated makes us feel crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. It definitely does. But anyways, when you were talking about like how people, I don't know, I've experienced a lot of that with my family, where sort of creating for me healthy boundaries, with my father, and then feeling a little bit invalidated by family members, expressing that my boundaries are selfish, or I'm just being sensitive or whatever. Have you experienced that like,
oh yeah,
from your perspective?
Not from other family members, but maybe from friends of hers that thought I was being too hard on her, or her priest reached out to me, and I don't know if any of these were at her behest or not, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to I've worked much too hard in support groups and therapy to give a shit what somebody else's opinion of my relationship and my experience is.
That's good. That's good, because you can't control what other people think.
No, that would be like you didn't go to a baseball game, but you heard somebody describe it to you, and you came up to one of the baseball players afterwards and said, I think you should have run a little harder to your right to catch that fly ball. It's like, you weren't there, man.
Yeah.
You weren't there. Yeah. And it's none of your business.
Right. So what, in where you are now with boundaries and intimacy, what kinds of things are you doing to sort of bolster those and strengthen those healthy boundaries?
Well, I find that the more I do healthy things that are that I enjoy doing, playing hockey, playing guitar, going to my support groups, maybe going to the gym, cooking for myself, the easier it is to set boundaries. The more I slip into isolation, deprivation, going too long without eating, not keeping the house clean, those are the things that will lead me down the path of leading a small, meek life.
Yeah. Yeah, you're doing the things that build you up, that give you that good sort of juju.
Yeah, and it's not a arrogance. I'm great. It's just that I'm worthy.
Yeah.
I'm worthy of love. I'm worthy of respect. Because if I don't feel I'm worthy of those things, I'm not going to stand up for myself. And I can tell you this much: if I'm deep in some addiction and just doing things I feel ashamed of, I know I'm not going to stand up for myself. Or if I do, it's going to come from a place of rage rather than from a place of peaceful self-advocacy.
Right. I think I know the answer to this, but does the non-healthy boundaries and intimacy sort of manifest ever on when you're playing hockey?
Oh, yeah. It's the best barometer for where I'm at spiritually, emotionally, et cetera, et cetera. One of the ways I knew that I must have had a little PTSD from the thing was, for one, the therapist had told me, you may find yourself getting irritable. And she named a couple of other things. And lo and behold, I was playing hockey the next night, and we were losing. And there was a couple of guys on my team that were just really giving a lackluster effort. And it pissed me off. And I was just started barking at them, and I could just feel the rage, just lava coming out. And I was not proud of it.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I'm pretty cool with, let people do what they want to do. I can't control them. All I can do is keep my side of the street clean, stick up for myself where I can, and try every day, just try to do something tiny to maybe make the world a slightly better place.
I like it. Yeah, my friend Katie, who was the guest on episode 4 of You Me Empathy, she says giving people the dignity of their own experience is
exactly
important. Yeah.
That's such a hallmark codependency tool.
Right.
That is a big one. And I learned that tool from my mom. She goes to a codependency support group and has for a long time. And when I was early in sobriety, I couldn't see that I was trying to financially rescue some people that really hadn't hit their bottom yet. And my mom said, when you rush in and rescue these people, you're enabling them and you're denying them their own experience.
Right.
And that's another big one for me, is I don't try to rescue people. There's a difference for me between helping someone and enabling someone.
Absolutely.
And sometimes it's not so clear cut, but the longer I live, the more it becomes a little clear to me.
Yeah, it is hard to discern sometimes because, and I know you can relate to this, but it's when you are a sensitive person and you care deeply about people, that stuff gets a little fuzzy, right? Because you feel like you're helping, but you might be enabling, or you might be doing some damage.
Yeah, it's important to understand the difference between you wanting them to act differently and you trying to manipulate them or control them into acting differently.
Yeah. So obviously you're focusing on self-care. Those are things that helps. Recognizing people for who they are, giving them the dignity of their own experience. We mentioned transparency. That's a huge one.
Mm-hmm. One where I have learned to respect other people's boundaries has been a big one too, is, I have learned that I often do what my mom did to me, which is that assume that other people's values and opinions are similar to mine, and then act as if oh, it's okay if I do this, without asking the person first.
Right.
A great example is I love to hug people, but now I say, are you comfortable with a hug before I hug somebody? Um, or are you comfortable talking about such and such subject matter instead of just launching into it because I'm okay with it?
Right.
Um, yeah, so that's something that I'm new to and
Yeah. That's a
trying
good
to
one.
practice.
I struggle with that one. Actually, like just tonight, I was having a conversation. My wife and her friend, or our friend Francie, we went and saw Phantom Thread.
Mm-hmm.
And on the drive back, we were talking about ghosts, for whatever reason.
Right.
And I was finding myself, as I was asking her, Francie, questions, I was finding myself being a little bit snippy almost. Like I was in, like I caught my, I think there was one question that sounded to me a little bit almost judgy. Like I
Mm-hmm.
was, because she was intimating that, like, maybe she does believe in ghosts, and that's not good. That's
Yeah.
not a good thing because because I have a certain perspective on the world doesn't mean everyone else should.
Right.
Yeah.
And then that's an opportunity to look inside yourself and say, why do why am I bothered by somebody believing in ghosts?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And so that can often be an opportunity for us to discover something about ourselves.
Yeah. You're so wise, Paul.
Well, spend some time with me. You'll change your opinion on that.
How has I wanted to ask you this because having this podcast now, how has a podcast served your mental health?
Um, it's done nothing but help. It's it's a very validating, connective experience for me. It brings a sense of meaning and purpose um, into my life that I already had to some degree through support groups and stuff like that, but it bumped it up even more. And there's just something so nice about doing something for a living that you believe in.
Yeah. It's a wonderful feeling for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm very happy you're doing it. I love
Thank you,
I love your podcast.
thank you, Noah. Appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. Well, what else do we have to say about intimacy and boundaries? Are we missing anything?
I don't think so. I
Yeah.
don't think so.
All right. Well, before we go, I always talk about empathy heroes. This is the section of the show where each of us call out someone in our lives, someone either living or dead or fictional or not or real, that is doing the good work in empathy and compassion as a human being. Is there an empathy hero you wanted to maybe mention?
Let me think about that for a second because there's so many.
Yes, there
Uh,
are.
yeah. You know who jumps to mind right now is a guy I had as a guest on the podcast named Kevin Briggs, and he's now a retired California Highway Patrol officer who spent years patrolling the Golden Gate Bridge and talked many people off the ledge, and since then has become an advocate for suicide prevention. And he goes around and he speaks, and he just had an intuitive and willingness and open-mindedness and very humble approach to wanting to help these people. And he mostly did it through just listening and empathizing and trying to tell them, oh, you have so much to live for. He just listened. And he would validate their experience by saying, wow, that sounds like you are really struggling. I mean, you must be in a tremendous amount of pain. I'm sorry you're experiencing that. And that to me is just Just awesome.
It is awesome. That is an amazing episode. That guy was quite profound. Listeners definitely go listen to that. Kevin Briggs was his name?
Yeah.
Kevin Briggs.
Briggs.
Awesome. My empathy hero this week is the author Wilson Rawls, who wrote one of my favorite books that I've read, I don't know, at least a dozen times, Where the Red Fern Grows. There's something close to my heart about a boy who has hound dogs, who sort of romps in the woods. That's very much close to my heart. And it's a very sad book, so I'm drawn to that as well. Mm-hmm. But I have a quote here from Wilson Rawls from that story. He says, quote, "It's strange indeed how memories can lie dormant in a man's mind for so many years. Yet those memories can be awakened and brought forth fresh and new just by something you've seen or something you've heard or the sight of an old familiar face."
So true.
Yep.
So true.
Indeed. Well, Paul, can you maybe tell the listeners where they can listen to your podcast and connect with you?
Yeah, pretty much through any podcast player, be it iTunes or Stitcher or whatever. It's called the Mental Illness Happy Hour, and our website is mentalpod.com.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for being on You Me Empathy.
My pleasure, Noam. Thanks for having me.
And to you listeners, I will say, as I always do, I'm here, you're here. We're here together on this wayward, overwhelming, awe-inspiring, pale blue dot. We have each other. It's You Me Empathy.